Maayong hapon kanatong tanan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our press conference on the closing of the 13th Conference of the ASEAN Ministers Responsible for Information, or AMRI for short. Let's find out what transpired during the conference and if there are any possible agreements that might have been reached by the ministers of the 10 ASEAN member nations. And here with us is no less than the chair of the 13th AMRI, our very own secretary of the Presidential Communications Operations Office, Secretary Sunny B. Coloma Jr.
Thank you, Fayette. I am pleased to introduce the Vice Chair of the 13th ASEAN Ministers Responsible for Information Conference, Dr. Yaacob Ibrahim, the Vice Chair of this conference and Minister of Communications and Information of Singapore. I am also pleased to introduce the Secretary General of ASEAN, His Excellency Le Leng Min.
Now let us listen to the opening statement of Secretary Coloma as AMRI Chair.
A conference of the AMRI. AMRI stands for ASEAN Ministers Responsible for Information. The AMRI meets every 2 years. The last meeting was held in Naypyidaw, Myanmar, and the meeting this year is being held in Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu. These meetings are held at 2 levels. The first phase of the meeting is a meeting of the senior officials responsible for information. So we call that the SOMRI meeting. And then the AMRI meeting follows the SOMRI meeting. The ministers will act on the recommendations and follow through on the preparatory work done by the senior officials. So that is the way we get things done in this group, and that is part of the ASEAN process. All 10 member states of ASEAN are represented in this year's meeting. The senior officials meeting began last Tuesday and were held the whole day of Tuesday and yesterday, and the ministers meeting was held the whole day today. I am pleased to report that we reached important agreements on how to follow through on the action programs that are part of our mission and work for ASEAN. As you know, last December 31, 2015, the One ASEAN community began to take effect throughout the region, and this year marks the first year of ASEAN integration. And at the summit of the ASEAN last November in Kuala Lumpur, the heads of states and governments of ASEAN declared in a document entitled ASEAN 2025, Forging Ahead Together, their blueprint of action, which describes how the countries in ASEAN will carry out the vision for ASEAN integration. And so we say that the meetings this year represent a new chapter for the information sector in the ASEAN community. I will just go through a quick summary of the statement that has been provided to each and every one of you. And we have also adopted the strategic plan for Information and Media 2016 to 25, which seeks to implement the communication aspect of the ASEAN Vision 2025 statement. And the key strategies of the strategic plan are outlined on page 2. There are four of them. Advancing cooperation and ASEAN-level agreements to provide regional mechanisms to promote access to information, encouraging the development of programs and the dissemination of information on the benefits and opportunities offered by the ASEAN community, etc. harnessing the use of information and communication technologies and engaging media professionals, research, business, and other entities in collaborative development of ASEAN-relevant content. And for each strategy, there are also more specific priority areas of action that have been duly spelled out. Another important aspect of our meeting was to discuss preparations for the observance of the 50th or Golden Jubilee anniversary of ASEAN, which will be marked on August 8, 2017. By the way, 2017 is also the year in which the Philippines would assume the chairmanship of ASEAN. So the ASEAN Summit in the Golden Jubilee year of ASEAN will be held in the Philippines. And we also an important aspect of our meeting was the conference with our dialogue partners, namely People's Republic of China, Japan, and Republic of Korea. This is the fourth conference that we held with our dialogue partners. The three countries are also dialogue partners of ASEAN itself. And they have also proposed specific areas of cooperation and specific areas of support and assistance that they would like to carry out. I would like to invite my colleagues here, our Vice Chair, Dr. Jacob Ibrahim, and the ASEAN Secretary General to likewise offer their comments and observations on the conferences we have just concluded. Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to echo what Chairman has said, that it has been a fruitful meeting for both AMRI and AMRI Plus 3, and we've discussed how best to continue the collaboration, especially in the information and media sector, following the formation of the ASEAN community, as mentioned again by Chair. And as you know, as ASEAN enters the next phase, it is about how we celebrate our 50th founding anniversary, and all the more important for the information sector to work together, and more importantly to celebrate and raise awareness of ASEAN, especially among the young in ASEAN. So we also discussed briefly this morning over breakfast a whole range of ideas on what we think would be the best way to celebrate the 50th anniversary. We've sort of tasked the senior officials to discuss some of these ideas, to drill down maybe a few, 2-3 ideas that can be agreed upon by the leaders, to be seen as a common celebration across the 10 ASEAN countries. But the most important thing we believe is that we should use this occasion to raise awareness about the founding of ASEAN, the history of ASEAN, especially among younger ASEAN members, so that they appreciate where we have come from the first 5 to where we are today, and our achievement as an ASEAN community. Singapore, as you know, is Vice Chair, and we look forward to working with the Chair, Republic of the Philippines, and all the ASEAN member states to support the Vision ASEAN 2025. We'll do our best as Vice Chair to work together to ensure that the vision of the ASEAN 2025 gets implemented. And then we will assume the chairmanship in 2018. And we thank us Philippines for doing a great job, and we will continue to build upon the good work of our ASEAN member states to continue the work of AMRI ministers when we convene our meeting in Singapore in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. May I now request our ASEAN Secretary General, His Excellency Le Leng Min, to give us his comments and observations.
Thank you, Chairman. Apart from what has been mentioned by the Chair and the Vice Chair on the outcome of the 13th Conference of AMRI, in a nutshell, I would say that one of the most important outcome of the conference was not only the recognition but also the emphasis on the need, to promote the role of the media and information sector in the ASEAN activities, especially in this year 2016, which is a critical year. When we in the wake of the establishment of the ASEAN community, and also the preparation for the commemoration of 50 years of ASEAN, and also the start of the implementation of the new vision that our leaders adopted last year, Vision 2025. And also in this conference, the conference recognizes the importance of ensuring the synergy between the efforts of the different pillars of the community. You may be aware that one of the central elements of the vision that our leaders have adopted is to ensure not only the balance, but also concerted and sustained progress on all the three pillars of the community. So the need to ensure the synergy in the efforts, not only of the social cultural community, that AMRI is a body, but also that of the political security community and the economic community. And also in striving to overcome one of the biggest challenge in the fact that although we have achieved no substantial progress, marked by the formal establishment of the community, adoption of the vision, but the level of awareness of the people in ASEAN and also of the people out of ASEAN about the very community that we have established, is quite modest. So the conference agreed on the need for regular monitoring of the level of awareness, and that also again point to the need to promote the role of the AMRI, of the media and information sector in the overall ASEAN Plan of Action for 2016 and for the next coming years leading to 2025.
At this juncture, we would like to open the floor to accommodate questions from our media friends. Please use the mic provided for. Please state your name, which agency you represent, and who you would like to address the question to. I'd like to remind our media friends, so please limit your questions to ASEAN-related matters. Joy Gumatay of PTV4, go ahead.
Yes, sir. My name is Joy Gumatay from PTV4. My question would be addressed to Secretary Coloma. Secretary, it is mentioned here that the ministers agreed to monitor the level of ASEAN awareness. I would like to ask, sir, what are the measures that we will use in evaluating the level of ASEAN awareness?
Perhaps the Secretary General would have more detailed information. What I recall is that before I attended the 2012 AMRI in Kuala Lumpur, I came across a study commissioned by the ASEAN Secretariat, which shows that the level of awareness is highest in the business sector, and it was at around 33%. If you survey the business sector across the 10 member states, it would be as high as 1 out of 3 would be aware. But in terms of the overall awareness, it presents some area of concern because it is not as we may want it to be. I think the figure was just hovering around 10%, more or less. So that means that if you go out into Lapu-Lapu City or Cebu City or Makati or Manila or Singapore, out of 10 people that you will meet, perhaps 1 will know about ASEAN. And we believe that is the baseline from which we should continually strive to raise the level of awareness. And that's why the Secretary General has pointed out that you, our friends in media, are who we need in terms of helping us propagate the heightened sense of awareness, because people would be getting their information from the various channels of mass media. And perhaps even now, after you may have asked your questions, we would like to ask you your candid views on how we may be able to engage you more meaningfully. For example, our dialogue partners earlier expressed great interest in providing opportunities for training and for further development of media professionals. That may be a channel of cooperation that we could all jointly explore, but we would like to get your views and your feedback. What types of programs do you think are relevant or necessary? What are the directions that you see from your perspective as media practitioners?
We'd like to tell everyone that we are live via RTV Malacanang YouTube channel. ABS, next question.
Let me mention also that
okay.
in 2012, in the Secretariat, we did a survey and finding out that out of the entire population of in the ASEAN capitals, only 76% of those asked said that they heard the names of ASEAN. But out of that, 76%, of those asked, 81%, said that we just, did not have any kind of root understanding about the ASEAN community that we were building. And then out of the concern for this level of awareness about ASEAN, we have undertaken numerous measures. The undertaking of various TV programs, media programs, and recently especially the commissioning of the ASEAN Virtual Learning Center website that is managed by the ASEAN Secretariat, and the adoption of the ASEAN Communication Master Plan, and of course the ethics conference adoption of the strategic plan on media and information. And for the 50th anniversary of ASEAN, that will be celebrated in 2017 under the Philippine chairmanship. We are preparing up to now. We have got proposals on more than 30 activities, but many of them are in the nature of promoting awareness about ASEAN. Those about women in ASEAN, those about youth in ASEAN, those about entrepreneurs in ASEAN, those about the civil society in ASEAN. So a lot of activities are being undertaken. I mentioned, we shall regularly monitor the level of awareness.
Follow up. Brief
So
follow-up.
when we refer to the level of awareness, we're just going to be limited on the knowledge stage because we have a communication framework known as KAIPA, knowledge, attitude, intention, practice, advocacy. So in terms of the level of awareness that we aim to achieve in the next 10 years, we're just going to target just the knowledge stage.
Not just that knowledge, but also where we are in implementing the measures. The outstanding measures under the Blueprint 2015, and those new measures, that we are going to develop under the new, the vision. For example, before we had only one unit in the economic department monitoring, the progress of implementation. Now we shall have those also in the other two departments in the ASEAN Secretariat. We shall have one division for that function in the political security department, and also in the social cultural department. And every year in my report, in the report of the Secretary General to the leaders of ASEAN, at the summit, I will report also on the status of implementation of ASEAN agreements and commitments. Actually, by the end of last year, when I reported to the leaders at the 27th summit, we had up to 213 ASEAN agreements, and not yet ratified or signed by member states. So this is one of the priorities that we will be focused on in the coming period.
We are also live over PTV4. ABS?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm George Kalipon from ABS-CBN. This question is addressed to Secretary Coloma. Sir, we all know, it was also mentioned earlier that our greatest challenge is to at least raise the level of awareness. And we talk about the inclusive awareness for every sector of the society. So the challenge also for us media is to be able to explain in layman, most especially to the grassroots level, on what ASEAN is all about and the importance of which. So is there any mechanism or device that, or a particular program in our strategic planning that, that would primarily address that particular concern, sir?
Yes, as I mentioned in our meeting, we adopted a 10-year strategic plan, and we are committed to implement various action measures. When we discussed, for example, the celebration of the Golden Jubilee of ASEAN, many of our suggestions revolve around cultural media, like stamps, books, songs, movies, the arts, because these are the popular channels by which people appreciate or grasp certain ideas. But I'd like to offer some perspective. ASEAN next year would be 50 years old. We just held the 13th AMRI, which means that AMRI, the formal group of ministers responsible for information, has been in existence only for half the time that ASEAN has been in existence. And we really have to look into this further. No? For example, if we consider the European community as a benchmark or as a standard, it is easy to understand why the EU would have a higher level of awareness. All they have to do is open their wallet, take out their money, and the name of the currency is EU, euro. I don't think we have reached that stage. No? So I don't think also that we should downplay or discount the level of significance of ASEAN. Because I think it would really require a lot of hard work in terms of creating a higher level of awareness, which is not to say that people are not enthusiastic about ASEAN. I'm sure if they come across an ASEAN program, let's say we have an ASEAN quiz program, we could see the enthusiasm of the school children that participate there. No? Or if we have an ASEAN filmmaking, young film producers film fest, no? I'm sure there would be many who would make out small, short film clips, upload this on YouTube. We also discussed extensively how social media can be a factor. No? For example, the suggestion on we could have a hashtag on ASEAN, and this could have a very tremendous multiplier effect among people that would exchange tweets or would exchange posts in Facebook or blogs. No? So we are not unduly alarmed because we believe we have a good cause, a good product. We know that the people of ASEAN believe in the concept. We have such common sense of identity. Our thread of history links every country with one another, with each other. This morning, if there were those of you that witnessed it, there was an all Cebuano and some from different universities, and they were able to present representatives of each of the 10 countries. So the ministers were astonished, or they said, "Oh wow!" And probably we could do this in any other country. Any other country in the region could produce a credible show as if there are representatives of citizens of each of the 10 countries. And that's because we are similar in appearance, we know each other's culture, there's a thread of history that binds all of us. So we believe it would not really take that long, especially with the positive and powerful influence of media, including the social media. We'll be able to close that gap very quickly. And that is why we are excited about the possibilities of ASEAN.
Other questions from our media friends?
Sir, good afternoon. I'm Mitch from the Freeman newspaper. Sir, considering that the next ASEAN summit will be held in the Philippines, what are we expecting on this summit, sir?
By the time that summit would be held in the Philippines, we would have experienced a year or more than 1 year, one full year of ASEAN. And each country will have a report to make, each country will have a story to tell, and we could really build upon that account or that report and see how we could scale our activities higher. We could examine new avenues of possibilities. And I think we should also appreciate that there would be natural synergies with other networks. No? Most of the countries in ASEAN are also members of APEC of UNESCO in the United Nations. There are many avenues for magnifying the cultural identity aspect, and also the economic cooperation aspect. One important outcome of our meeting this year was for the ministers to acknowledge the need for being more purposive and being more involved in all the activities of ASEAN. The Secretary General was one of those who pointed out that ASEAN has three pillars: political security, economic, and socio-cultural. The information ministers are lodged in the socio-cultural, but you will all agree that our work would also encompass the two other pillars. And once we get into high gear and synchronize our efforts with those of the other two pillars, we're very confident that we could move faster and there could be greater cohesion and a more positive outlook and a higher level of awareness.
Follow up, sir. Is there any specific place in the Philippines that this summit will be held, or any may choices na ba, sir?
Secret. The last one was held in Cebu. All I know is that we already have a national organizing committee, and it's headed also by Ambassador Marshall Painor, who was the head of the NOC for the APEC. He has the experience, he has the track record. The various agencies of government have already started moving. We have provided a budget for the preparatory work because we will also undergo a transition. Unlike our preparations for APEC, which dated back to 2011, I think, or even 2010, the new administration that will take over on June 30 should be able to benefit from the preparatory work that we would be doing. But they wouldn't have as much time as we did for APEC. But we're confident that with our experience in handling the papal visit, APEC with 21 heads of state, the ASEAN actually is also nearly as formidable as APEC, because we have ASEAN, and then we have the East Asian Summit, which includes 8 more countries. So in total, it's 18 countries. It's almost as numerous as APEC. No? The heads of state that you saw in APEC will also be there. We have US, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Russia, Korea, China, and one more country. 10 plus 8. So it's going to be exciting wherever it may be. It may be held. I'm not aware if the committee has even touched on that topic yet, but the Secretary General may know something I don't know.
I don't know either, but always anniversaries are occasions for reflection and creation. Reflection of 50 years of ASEAN, how we have, over 50 years, turned ASEAN from an organization of only 5 members, now 10 members, sooner or later 11 members, all countries of the region, and how, coming from different countries, hatreds, can go to other brothers in family way, the ASEAN way, with confidence in peace, stability, and opportunities, and what has been the factor that has ensured us of the future of ASEAN. So also, as Chairman mentioned, it would be 1 year and a half after the committee was launched, and after we would have started implementation of the new vision. So it's also a good occasion for reflection and mapping out the way forward for us.
We can accommodate only one last question, since there is an engagement that has to be attended to. So one last question from our media friends. No more from this side, from the right side. Then I'll give that opportunity to Joy of PTV4.
My question would be for Secretary General. We've mentioned that we want to achieve genuine ASEAN integration, meaning it should be all-encompassing. I just want to ask Secretary General, what are our plans and programs in improving the level of awareness of people with special needs, or, for example, children enrolled on special education? As we all know, they have different ways on how they can absorb the information and be aware on different things happening around us.
That's why I mentioned that, out of the more than 30, activities we are planning for the celebration of ASEAN next year. There are, activities relating to women, to youth, to people with disability, with, entrepreneurs, all walks of life in ASEAN. And of course, under the new ASCC, ASEAN Social Community, blueprint. Also, there are activities, relating to this group of people in ASEAN. You may be aware that, even for the 2015 ASCC blueprint, we have, a lot of, already measures, relating to these, otherwise, marginalized, people. And it's only out of those measures, only 3% have been implemented. And that's not point to the negative kind of side of the story, because these measures are those of multiple projects. So they are of long-term plan, and also they are for long-term effect. So in addition to those, outstanding measures, we have a lot more to be developed under strategic measures we have already, adopted in the new blueprints.
At this point, we'd like to get the brief parting statement of all our distinguished gentlemen, ministers, starting with the ASEAN Vice Chair.
I'm not the ASEAN Vice Chair, the AMRI Vice Chair.
I'm sorry, so ASEAN AMRI Vice Chair. Okay. AMRI Vice Chair.
I think on the question of awareness, I thought it's a good question. It's going to be a long journey, obviously, but we have 50 years of head start. We've done well in the last 50 years, as mentioned by the SecGen, starting with 5 countries. Now we have 10 countries. There is a plan. There's an ASEAN community. And obviously, if you look at the region of 600 million people with growing affluence, it is a growing area. Awareness will come in many different ways, one of which will be benefits to the people of ASEAN. And there have been tremendous benefits brought about with growing affluence across the region. And I personally believe the next affluence will come from the internet, because of greater connectivity. Almost everyone in the region has a smartphone. And we discussed this morning of how we should leverage on the whole social media to disseminate content which is from ASEAN, which we should be proud of, which is in fact very, very good high-level content that can only raise not our sense of awareness, but our sense of pride as being a member of ASEAN states, and to use that content to also leverage upon the region to bring in investments and other things into the region. I think the connectivity is one of the big things that have happened in ASEAN. Most of our countries are well wired up in terms of the use of the internet. And it's not just for the purpose of communication, but it also encourages commerce, exchange, and what have you. So to a large extent, I think we are in a better position now compared to 50 years ago. But what will happen for the next 50 years, it depends on what the member states will do in terms of leveraging on technology to bring about the kind of change that we want to see in the lives of our people in ASEAN. But having said that, I think there has been tremendous improvement, growth, and raising in the standard of living across ASEAN, primarily because ASEAN have been able to work together. Exchange programs have taken place across different countries. People have visited one another. Tourism is on the rise. This is the 1-week school holiday in Singapore. Nobody's in Singapore. Everybody's in ASEAN having holidays. So to a large extent, I think we have done well in terms of increasing the connectivity. I think through that, we can bring about a greater level of awareness of what ASEAN is all about. So I'm confident that we will achieve those targets that you talked about. Thank you.
The ASEAN Secretary General. Go ahead. Some brief parting statements, sir.
I'm not sure if you know what is the question.
Summing up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, of course, we have three pillars of community, but you know, the most tangible, progress people could see, and we want to see is that you know, economic, you know, the pillar. And let me say, by now, up to 96% of you know the old tariff line in the ASEAN countries have been eliminated, and by 2018, all those tariff lines in ASEAN countries will be brought down to zero, meaning that you know goods will move freely among the ASEAN countries. And besides, ASEAN is the only regional organization having you know EFTAs with all the major EFTA partners, with Japan, with Korea, with China, Australia, New Zealand, and India. And besides, now we are negotiating in the regional comprehensive economic partnership that will create perhaps the biggest single market in the world, comprising of all ASEAN countries and all those 6 EFTA partners of ASEAN. And besides, 4 ASEAN countries have concluded the TPP, the Trans-Pacific the partnership, meaning that by the end of this year, when the RCEP will be concluded, we share not only the AEC, the ASEAN Economic Community, but also that will be part of a much larger market. So opportunities for trade, for investment, for economic cooperation, not only among ASEAN countries, but with those most important partners of ASEAN, are enhanced. And also we have up to now about 100 subsectors in the service sector subjected to liberalization. And also in terms of labor mobility, we have concluded 8 mutual recognition arrangement, meaning that if you are a dentist, if you are an accountant, among the 8 groups, you can move freely among the ASEAN countries looking for jobs opportunities. And we have up to now 2,000 professionals have been registered for that opportunities. So with the establishment of the AEC, the conclusion of the RCEP, with the also foreseen conclusion of the ASEAN Hong Kong FTA, with the conclusion of later, but with the start of otherwise the resumption of negotiations between ASEAN and the EU on ASEAN EU FTA. So a lot of opportunities we will be there for the businesses of ASEAN, for the businesses in the partner countries of ASEAN, for the overall economic cooperation, and of course political security. If you look back at what we were and how what situation we were in 50 years ago, and now, what has been the big difference? We don't have to bother about any possibility of eruption of conflict or hostility among ASEAN countries. That's beyond our imagination. And the ability to resolve dispute differences between ASEAN and any potential kind of a party to any conflict are much higher and feasible. For that, now besides ASEAN countries, we have already 22 non-ASEAN countries having acceded to the TAC, the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. Would govern now not only the relations among ASEAN countries, but also among ASEAN countries and the other 22 non-ASEAN countries. And of course, as I mentioned, one of the central elements in the new vision that our leaders have adopted, which will guide our work in the next 10 years, is to ensure progress. Of course, very important on the economic pillar, but also on the other 2 pillars of community. So we shall have a really, people-oriented, people-centered, politically cohesive, economically integrated, and social responsible, the community. I mean, in the real sense that that we have included in the blueprint, in the roadmap, and in the new vision.
Now the closing statement of our 13th AMRI Chair, Secretary Coloma.
ASEAN is a community of opportunity. And the greatest opportunity, the greatest potential of ASEAN is in its people. The greatest wealth of our region would be our people. Consider this, no? Most of the countries in the region are in the demographic sweet spot, where most of the population is in the young, working, and most productive age brackets. Starting from 1995 up to 2015, most of the countries were reaching that state, and that favorable window of opportunity would last until 2050. So it's a long period. What does this mean? For example, for the Philippines, our median age is only 22 years old. If we could empower the youth of this land with more highly remunerative jobs, if we could further develop their level of skills, imagine the tremendous potential that they could achieve. This is what gives us great confidence in ASEAN. We have strong, dynamic, and vibrant people that have a cohesive and unified culture, shared values, and would be able to move in an integrated fashion in the spheres of the economy, of their polity, and also in terms of people-to-people connections. So that's it. ASEAN is a region of tremendous opportunity, and we have great faith and confidence that ASEAN will rise.
We now end our press conference. We'd like to thank our distinguished gentlemen and all our media friends. Daghang kaayo sa inyong pag-anhi, and good afternoon to all of you.
Thank you to all of you.